we look at this entrepreneurial seizure, at the problems and pain and the solutions and the quick fixes and the diagnosis. We look at this under the time money matrix. Many of you guys have seen this before, and I'm going to walk through it briefly to talk about how important this is. This is critical to get into the CEO mindset, because if you don't, you're either spending too much time or not making enough money. And realize when I say making enough money, I don't say that from a position of greed. I want to be very clear about that. Treating patients and making more money has nothing to do with greed or with excessiveness or a numbers-driven practice like you've heard us talk about many times before. When I use that phrase, creating more money, profits are what allow you to live the lifestyle you want to live, to raise your team and give them the lifestyle that they want to live. It allows you to reinvest in your practice and to take better care of your patients, to reinvest in yourself, to take more continuing education. Without growth and profits, there's nothing left to reinvest into yourself, your team, or your practice. So when I say make more money, that's what I really mean by that. I just can't go into a 60-second conversation around what is money every time I say that. So in the past, we've had people that have said, oh, Colin, you don't make more money. I'm happy, or I'm content, or whatever it is. Well, it's not about that. It's about what are we going to go and create the bigger, better future so that we can grow ourselves and grow our team and be able to achieve the bigger things that we want to achieve in life. And all of those things are accomplished through time and money. So of these four quadrants, the practitioner, which is where the majority of dentists fall into, is a practitioner mindset. The perfectionist, which is the next largest block that dentists fall into. Then we have the Piddler and the CEO. And I'm going to talk about each of these very quickly. There's three qualities that we rate each archetype around, each quadrant around. The practitioner oftentimes sees a lot of patients. They spend a lot of their time, and they oftentimes are very successful by all traditional measures. They're making good numbers. They've got a very successful practice. The problem is they're spending all their time doing it. They're chained to their practice. They're there nights and weekends because not only are they fully managing the clinical side and driving that, but they're also doing everything else. 60% of dentists fall into this category as practitioners. Now, practitioners love dentistry, right? And they love helping their patients. They love making a difference. They love spending time with their patients. Many of these dentists fall into a general practitioner model. Some don't, and we'll talk about some of that. Some of these guys are what I call on roller skates, right? Where they're just flying between operatories. These practitioners are characterized by spending their time working in the practice instead of on the practice. And that's a concept. If you're not familiar with the in versus on, read the E-Myth for dentists. It's on Amazon. It's, what is it, David? $10, $15?
Yep.
I don't even, some nominal amount of money. Go buy it. The E-Myth for dentists. It's on Amazon. Typically, practitioners stuck in the busyness of the practice, they're running things in the back. Like I said earlier, they're managing the back. They're treating the patients. They spend all their time doing that. And the culture, the team, sometimes the finances are what suffer. And the practitioner this is the old adage, trading time for money. That's the perfect bumper sticker to put on the practitioner, is they trade time for money. It's just back and forth. And they make a good living. They're very successful. They're still trading time for money. And we just got to call it what it is. The next I want to talk about is the perfectionist. Now, the perfectionist oftentimes sees less patients, but they spend more time doing it. And as a result, they experience lower collections. About 20% of the dentists in the United States fall into the perfectionist bucket. I call the perfectionist an artist. They're really, really good at what they do. I've heard dentists that fall into the perfectionist bucket tell me things like, I had the best hands in my dental class at school. I mean, these are guys that are really, really talented, really skilled. But with any high level of competence, there's always things that we're not strong in. And that leads to putting us into the perfectionist bucket. The perfectionist is plagued by the trading of time for money issue still. They love doing everything themselves. Oftentimes that leads to delegation issues. They may say things like, I can't delegate. Nobody can do it as good as me. And realize that's not a clinical diagnosis. I'm not saying that being able to do things perfect is a bad thing at all. By all means, it's a great thing. But you have to realize that in that trade-off, you are diminishing your own growth and your own potential and that of your team. What I'm saying is that if you want to grow your practice, how can we maintain our high standards of excellence and get off this trading time for money bus thing, right? How can we better delegate and manage our practice so that we can move from the perfectionist up into the practitioner, or from the perfectionist vertically into the CEO, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. Again, these guys have each box has tremendous amounts of talent. None of these boxes are right or wrong or good or bad. Each box is just different. And it's characterized by, again, the grid axis. So let's talk about the Piddler now. I got to admit, I got the name the Piddler from a conversation I had. I've never told this story, I don't think. I don't think I've ever told this story. Is my dad in here? I don't want to tell it if he's in here. He'll probably get mad. He's not in here. Okay, I'll tell the story. So it was like 10 years ago, maybe 15. It was probably 15 years ago. And we're having a conversation. And we were sitting in a hotel in like, I don't know, Chicago or Phoenix. We had gone to this business conference together, and we're sitting in this hotel working. And it was after the conference. It was 6 or 7 o'clock, and we'd had dinner, and we come back to the room. And we were talking about this or that, and my dad, Dr. Ron, starts in on all these things he's got to do. And very detailed. Ron is an extremely detailed person. I mean, to a fault. Itemized list check boxes for everything. And I looked at him and I said, Dad, what are you doing? You got to go do this over here. We just got out of this conference. You got to go do this over here. We talked about doing this and this big idea. And he's like, I can't. I got to do this and this and this and this. And this. I said, Dad, quit piddling around. You're piddling around over here, and you're not getting to the really important things you need over here. And he hated that word. He lit me up when I said you're piddling around. I don't know if that was like a trigger word or what, but to this day, if I call him a piddler, if I want him to get fire coming out his rear, I just call him a piddler. Tell him to stop piddling around. And man, that motivates him. So anyway, the piddler is characterized by spending less time, less collections, less patience. Oftentimes, they're kind of stuck. They're kind of stuck in their own machinations, so to speak. Delegation is sometimes hard. Oftentimes, these guys, and dentists by default, are very high fact finders. I mean, that's what it is. They're very high fact. When we look at Colby scores for dentists, they're all very high fact finders. And oftentimes that exacerbates the issue of being what I call the piddler. Because if you've ever felt to yourself like, I can't make this decision until I have more information, or maybe you have a real fear of failure. Now, oftentimes we don't feel like we have a fear of failure. If I'm scared of failing, I'm not sitting here talking to myself saying, man, I'm afraid of failure. There's other ways that manifests that I tell myself that. But oftentimes that is what happens. That's what has these docs locked up. This is generally about 10% of the dentists that we work with fall into this bucket. And they spend a lot of their time piddling around, looking and doing not the important things, the things that they need to be delegating and focused on. They're not. They're doing all their piddling around. And what happens here is this often leads to second and third order consequences. The team loses their passion. They maybe feel disconnected. They don't see a path forward. They have a loss of direction, loss of energy in their work. And this vicious cycle is then picked up. Your patients are going to pick it up too. You know, if your team is unmotivated, your patients are going to recognize it. They're going to feel it. And sometimes I've heard these guys say, man, times have just changed and I don't know what to do now. Right? So there's different ways that this manifests itself. But oftentimes it's just a general feeling of being overwhelmed, dominated, locked up, just stuck. Now, the CEO dentist, this is what we call the top left bracket. They're leading their team. They're inspiring and driving the culture. The CEO dentist has figured out how to leave the time for money trade-off behind. When you see practices that are growing quickly, this is oftentimes a factor in what's going on behind the scenes. They figured out how to work less, spend more time treating less patients, and make more and have higher collections. They often have great systems. They have a great team. These are the guys that are enjoying all the facets of their life. They're not chained to the practice. They don't have B and C players on their team. If you've got a people problem, it's going to take you 3 to 6 months to solve a people problem in your practice. If you've got B and C players running around being not performing. If you don't have enough new patients in your practice, you got holes in your schedule, that's going to take you a few months to figure out and solve. If you don't like your profit and your cash flow, that's going to take you 3 to 6 months to really get lined out. If all the problems in practices take 3 to 6 months. Yeah, there's some things you can do in 30 days. Sure. There's progress we can make at 60 days. Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff that can happen in 90 days. 3 to 6 months is just generally where most practices are able to move through a productive iteration of improving their practice, right? You're not working on the practice full time. You're also still doing clinical dentistry in a lot of cases. 3 to 6 months is just where we see most practices taking to really make significant strides of improving. So what changes should you make today to set yourself up 6 to 9 months from now? Make a list. The CEO dentist, the biggest opportunity for the CEO dentist is to put in place the repeatable systems and processes so they can grow and scale larger, more locations, bigger, better, with their practice, their people, and their patients to really, really thrive. What box do you fall into? And you got to be honest. Where's the opportunity? Remember, every box has tremendous skills in certain areas. What skills do you need? Where are the strengths that you need to develop in order to move your practice forward, right? Weaknesses are just strengths that we need to develop. What muscle do you need to build? If you need to go to the gym and do some curls or some leg presses or whatever it is, just go figure it out and then go to the gym and do it. If you need a little bit of muscle built around the culture side, if you need a little bit of muscle built around the profit side, if you need a little bit of muscle built around the patient side, whatever that muscle you need to grow is, go to the gym or do whatever you need to do, but be honest with yourself. That's what I'm going to ask you to be tonight. Don't take the shot of Novocaine and get numb to it. That's the worst thing you can do is to sit here tonight and listen to me and then get back into the hair on fire tomorrow and next week. And you've like I started off the webinar with, you've got a shot of Novocaine right now in your mouth. You've gone from 0 to hair on fire. And you feel really good right now because you're being busy. but busy does not mean productive. And I would challenge everybody to be honest about where you're at right now. Where is your practice at? Just be honest with yourself about what you're trying to do and what you want to accomplish. Just because I see this all the time. Colin, I want to do 5 million next year. Okay, great. What'd you do last year? Well, this year I did 4 million. Next year I want to do 5. Okay, great. 20% growth. That's doable. We can make that happen. How are you going to do it? Well, I'm just going to go do it. Well, what do you mean? How are you going to go from 4 million to 5 million a year? I'm just going to go do it. Well, that doesn't work. You can't just put a goal on the wall and all of a sudden your collections magically increase. You've got to go build the muscle before you're going to go from 4 to 5 million. And that's just what I'm challenging you guys here tonight to figure out. Which box are you in? Are you a perfectionist? Is there maybe some stuff, and oftentimes you don't fall into one box. Maybe there's some area of your life that you feel like a piddler in. I talked to a dentist last week that does his own taxes. He says, Colin, I hate doing taxes. I just don't feel like I can trust my CPA to do it right. I said, well, then you need a new CPA. The problem here is not, I need to do my own taxes. The problem is you need to get a new CPA that you trust to delegate it to, so you don't spend 50 hours doing your own taxes.